Welcome everybody. My name is Vesa Tihonen. I come from Tectia Corporation. You might formally know it by its past name SSH. We've been in business since 1995, and we're the original inventors of the secure shell SSH protocol. And today I'm going to talk about tokenless two-factor authentication for Juniper SSL VPN appliances. We are, as of recently, a technology alliance partner with Juniper, and here in Hungary, our distributor is Relnet. So, the contents of today's presentation is first I will cover a basic introduction of Tectia Mobile ID. Then we'll look at some use cases and benefits of Tectia Mobile ID, the key differentiators of it. Then briefly covering the Juniper Technology Alliance details. Then looking at two specific SSL VPN login use cases for Juniper VPN appliances, and finally taking a quick dive into how you go about integrating Tectia Mobile ID with your Juniper SSL VPN appliance, and finally a summary. So we like to call Tectia's Mobile ID as a next generation tokenless authentication solution. In essence, it performs multi-factor authentication. It's either a virtual appliance or a physical appliance, whichever you prefer, and it's designed specifically for on-demand and out-of-band authentication. The main use case is the high-quality SMS one-time password as strong authentication technology instead of your traditional tokens, password lists, and so on. However, Mobile ID is a full-fledged authentication platform and appliance, so it also supports virtually all OTP delivery mechanisms that exist, such as your traditional password lists, email OTP, voice OTP, instant messaging OTP, and any oath-compliant hardware or software token. For example, you could use Google Authenticator with Mobile ID. It comes bundled with operator-grade SMS messaging connections out of the box, and it's fully customizable, meaning any component within the infrastructure that Mobile ID connects to can be interchanged, and some of the parts of Mobile ID itself as well. But we'll look at that in more detail in slides to come. So, when would you consider going the tokenless login route? Well, basically when you have geographically dispersed groups of users, they're scattered to different locations physically. When your users are mobile and remote, when you are providing an extranet to your users, when you have ad hoc login requirements that somebody needs to log in with strong authentication now for a couple of days and then they disappear. You can't do that easily with physical tokens. And also, when you don't want to invest and manage any hardware related to strong authentication, and when you cannot wait for weeks for a new token to be delivered. Benefits of using Tectia Mobile ID and its SMS authentication is that there's, first of all, no seed data to be compromised because the password is generated ad hoc on the fly at the login time. There are no security devices to be stolen or lost. There's always, out of the box, 24/7 service for deactivation provided by your mobile phone operator. So you don't need a company help desk for that anymore, whereas this is not the case with hardware tokens. And as I mentioned, the OTP password is 100% unpredictable. It's a random number, unlike with tokens. When the OTP is delivered out of band through the GSM or 3G networks, we accomplish a workaround for the man in the middle or man in the browser attacks, which occur within browser sessions. You get improved user login experience because of this intuitive use of mobile ID. You significantly reduce administration because mobile ID is virtually an admin-free system, and you reduce the need for any help desk. Further use cases and benefits of using Tectia Mobile ID, because as I mentioned, it's an authentication platform, so it can address many use cases, whereas the SMS OTP is for SSL VPN appliances is the main use case. You can proactively lock end users' account after an arbitrary number of failed login attempts. You will get notification of logged account via SMS or email. You can allow account reactivation via SMS, and by account we're referring to a user account in LDAP or Active Directory. You can do geo IP match against the mobile device's location and the application that is, for example, SSL VPN, where that request is coming, to make sure that the person is in the same place. So it doesn't, the mobile ID doesn't sit, or the mobile device doesn't sit in Nigeria and your guy is supposed to be in Hungary. And you can permit forgotten password PIN reset via SMS, eliminating the need, again, for any help desk services. So you offload that to the end user. The unique differentiators of Tectia Mobile ID, there are 4 key items here. It's the most scalable and reliable solution out there. It's the fastest to deploy and take into use. It is the most cost-efficient solution out there, and it provides the best user experience for your end users. And we will look into each of these items. First, the unmatched scalability and reliability. It virtually scales to millions of concurrent users. You might have 20 people in your organization, but you might have millions, and one mobile ID appliance will be able to serve all of those. And this is where we come to the second bullet, which is the operator-grade SMS delivery worldwide with a guaranteed SLA delivery time on the throughput. So basically we have integrated SMS gateways from SMS aggregators around the world to ensure that no matter where you are, you will get your text or OTP delivered. Recently, as mentioned before, we are now certified technology alliance partner and a certified solution for Juniper SSL VPN appliances by Juniper themselves. When it comes to reliability of this technology, we've been in live production since 2003 with Mobile ID server. And finally, with the modular architecture that Mobile ID provides, we can provide scalability, customization, and control of network conditions and business logic. So you can actually extend the business logic of your login use case because you can script on top of Mobile ID. And we'll look at that in a minute. Then the cost factor. It has unmatched total cost of ownership, and return of investment. We have three different very flexible pricing options. You can purchase a perpetual license. You can go with monthly subscription that is based on active users only. So you might have in your Active Directory 10,000 people, but if only 10 use mobile ID for login during a given month, you will only be paying for 10 users. It's practically zero administration system, so it's a fire and forget type of system, because you only need to add or remove user accounts in your Active Directory, and that's it. It's fully tokenless with the SMS OTP, so there's no logistics overhead. Looking at the deployment and activation, here we are comparing a known token vendor's steps to add or remove a new user. As you can see, 6 or 7 steps. Whereas with mobile ID, you add or remove a user account into the Active Directory and you're done. And then the user experience. It's so intuitive that most of our customers have deployed and taken into use mobile ID overnight without informing or training any of their workforce, and they have received no help desk calls because everybody gets it immediately. At the login time, your prompt changes into please type in your SMS password, and at the same time your mobile phone beeps and you get a flash SMS that pops on top of everything, and it reads out loud your pops out the text, hello user, your SMS password is 12345, and you only have one button, dismiss. And it's not stored on the mobile device because it's a flash message. And it works on any phone anywhere in the world. Now, looking at the fact that it's a full-fledged authentication platform, as I mentioned with the M rules, we can basically address any ad hoc multi-factor authentication problem that the customer might have. The main use case is the two-factor authentication for SSL VPN appliances, as Mobile ID is a full-fledged radius server. Then the second use case, the second most common use case, is the two-factor authentication for web services and web portals, as it's a SOAP-compliant authentication server. And the third one is addressing the man in the browser or man in the middle threats because of the out-of-band authentication. Mobile ID is multi-domain, so you can connect one appliance to any number of LDAPs or Active Directories. So your organization might have 4 different Active Directories. We can look up the user in each of these in a sequence until we find him or her or that particular account. And because of this, it also is very suitable for service provider use. A service provider could serve many customers with just one instance of mobile ID. Just connect mobile ID to each customer's AD, define the rule that that AD belongs to that SSL VPN appliance, and so on. We can do Microsoft Outlook Web Access, strong authentication. We can deliver the OTP via instant messaging, thanks to the fact that we have integrated with Microsoft's Unified Access Gateway. We can do Windows Terminal service logins. We support all OTP techniques. SMS OTP delivery is also available from a cloud for Windows environments. You just install one Microsoft installer on a machine that is within your domain and point it to the domain controller and point your SSL VPN to that machine, and you're done. You are getting SMS OTP from the cloud. And of course, as I mentioned before, the online banking transaction verification. We can create a custom rule on top of mobile ID that actually does online transaction verification. Let's take a use case where the bank wants to authenticate a transaction during non-office hours. So let's say between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. any wire transfer above, let's say, 1,000 euros. We want to send an SMS to the customer with the details of that transaction, asking whether you're really doing this or whether it's going to the Cayman Islands to some shady account where your account has been compromised. We can do that. We can use the SMS channel as a two-way communication channel between the end user and mobile ID. Looking at an mRules example, the scripting engine and the script is called an mRule. So, as I mentioned, it does custom business logic for authentication, authorization, and access. New authentication methods can be added and the existing ones extended. They can be chained, they can be triggered, they can be scheduled, and so on. Network packets, i.e. radius or SOAP, can be rewritten, rerouted, scheduled, and so on. And here, in this text editor, you see an example, a real-life example of one mRule script. It says that if the username starts with TK underscore and the Radius client has a name SA2500, which is the Juniper SA series SSL VPN appliance, we do token authentication. Otherwise, if the source IP is within the network 10.1.0.0 and the time is between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m., also require a PIN. Then, if the user account, the Active Directory user account, has an expired password, generate a new password, change it, and send the new password via SMS to the end user. Finally, if there is no mobile phone number in that account, in the AD, send an information about it to the end user via SMS and request that the end user types in the mobile phone number, and finally, when that's done, mobile ID saves it to the LDAP. So pretty cool use cases can be done on top of mobile ID. Then let's have a look at the Juniper Technology Alliance. So together with Juniper, we are providing a full turnkey two-factor authentication solution without the challenges of first generation two-factor authentication. That's basically the bottom line. So why we need two-factor authentication is obviously to protect your networks and your business critical information against any unauthorized access. We also reduce, with this solution, your IT admin workload and hardware costs. We scale very easily from a few users to hundreds of thousands and to millions of users with the SMS OTP delivery. And with this solution, you can be up and running in hours in a production environment rather than weeks or even months. And this is a depiction of how Mobile ID actually integrates to the existing corporate infrastructure where you have Juniper SSL VPN appliance. On the left-hand side, at the bottom, you have your remote user. They can be connecting externally across internet, or they can be logging in the internal network. They hit the corporate firewall, then they get to the Juniper SSL VPN appliance. The appliance sends a radius packet to Mobile ID with the user name and password that the user just typed in. Mobile ID goes to the Active Directory or LDAP and looks up this user and validates the credentials. If the password matches, it generates on the fly, then and there, the one-time password and sends it either through customers' preferred SMS gateway or via TechDia's integrated messaging service gateways to the 3G or GSM network and delivers this OTP to the end user. And the end user keys that in to the dialog that prompts for the SMS passcode. Again, it goes to the Juniper SSL VPN appliance, which sends the radius packet to Mobile ID, and Mobile ID validates whether it's correct or not. So, looking at a real-life scenario. This is a Juniper SA series SSL VPN login screen. I type in my username and password, press sign in. My phone beeps and the dialog changes to please enter your SMS password. I key in 573924, press sign in, and I'm done. A second scenario might be that the customer wants to send their end users a one-time password that is valid for a certain period of time in advance. We can do that. So in this scenario, you have as a text your OTP that is valid for n number of days. You key that in as per the previous example and you're logged in. Okay, now having a quick look at the integration with Juniper SSL VPN appliance. Mobile ID, as I mentioned, is a radius server. So this is pretty much everything that you need to configure on your SSL VPN appliance side of things. You simply need to know the IP, the port, shared secret, an accounting port, set the timeout, and that's more or less it. Then, on Mobile ID's end, you create a new radius client. So you basically allow and open up access to that SSL VPN appliance, because by default, Mobile ID doesn't accept any requests. They need to be configured and opened up. So here, all you need to do is key in the IP address of your SSL VPN appliance, set the same secret, and you're done. Then you need to, as a third and final step, you need to point Mobile ID to your Active Directory. And this is done via the admin interface, which is 100% web-based, by typing in the IP address, the port, the protocol, login name, and password. And that's it. Mobile ID is live. You can start using it. Now let's look at some basic features of the web admin interface. You can monitor your virtual or physical appliance, whether it's running, how much CPU and memory it is consuming, how big the log files have grown. You can also look at on the default screen the very last logins, and you will see in color whether there are any failures or not. On the right hand side you have wizards for adding a new LDAP, adding a new SMS gateway, or adding a new Radius or SOAP client. You can obviously via the admin GUI also review and export all the logs of Mobile ID. And they are fairly self-explanatory, with challenge password verified, sending challenge, sending flash SMS, 0 out of 3 failures, and so on. At this point, I urge all of you to go to www.techdia.com, search for Mobile ID, click on Mobile ID, link that pops up, and you will have these links available. And with this, you can run a live VPN demonstration completely free of charge, and it works for anybody, anywhere in the world. And it has Juniper SSL VPN login functionality, as we saw just now in my previous slides. So you can demonstrate, you can trial this live free of charge. All you need to key in is your name, email, and phone number. So, as a summary, Techdia Mobile ID provides out-of-the-box operator-grade messaging capabilities through its integrated SMS gateway hubs across the world. They all have high availability. It allows ad hoc use because you simply need to add or remove a user account in the Active Directory. It is highly scalable because you can have millions of users in your AD, and Mobile ID will still work. It provides a framework for customized login methods and added business logic. And finally, it's now certified for Juniper SSL VPN appliances. So with this, I thank you for your attention, and I would like to hear any questions you guys might have. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we are represented by RelNet here in Hungary. So if you have any questions, are interested to hear more about Mobile ID, please contact your RelNet representatives, and they'll be happy to help you with anything Mobile ID needed or related. Thanks, guys.